Today on the bass channel, we're checking out the Thunderbird bass from Gibson. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and don't forget to ring that notification bell. Also, if you want to get yourself one of these t-shirts, check them out either in the YouTube merch shelf or in the link in the description below. And if you're not new here, things are going to roll out just a little bit differently than normal. Typically, when we review any kind of pedal amp, or in this case, bass, I try to get as many different players as possible to showcase a wide variety of styles to give you the best idea of how this particular instrument may fit in your hands. But since we still are kind of quarantined and shut down, getting the bass in the hands of my team is a little bit difficult, so this time you're going to have to just put up with me. I'm not the best bass player in the world, and I'm even worse on camera, but I hope that doesn't stop you from really being able to judge how this instrument sounds. Now, the model that I have here today is made in 2019, but as far as I could tell, the 2020 model really has no difference. So, as per usual, I'm going to start by reading some facts off of the website, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on the bass, so if that's something that's worthwhile to you, please stick around to the end. But for now, let's burn down some facts. The Gibson Thunderbird has the classic reverse body and headstock design as originally introduced in 1963 as Gibson's first neck-through body bass design. The traditional 9-ply mahogany walnut neck-through body construction provides a thundering low-end response and piano-like sustain. The narrow nut width and rounded neck profile feels both fast and intuitive. The Thunderbird high-output ceramic magnet-loaded humbucking pickups deliver the sonic and iconic low-end voice for which the Thunderbird is known. The Gibson Thunderbird has a solid, non-weight relieved mahogany body and 9-ply mahogany and walnut neck. The bass sports a 34-inch scale with a rosewood fingerboard, 12-inch fingerboard radius, and 20 medium jumbo frets. The nut width is 1.5 inches and sports a Graphtec nut. So now that we know a little bit more about the construction of the bass, let's get an idea of how those ceramic pickups sound. I'm going to start with both pickups on, move over to the neck, then to the bridge, and then repeat the process with the tone off. Now let's hear those same pickup variations, but this time I'm going to ditch the pick and play only fingerstyle. example features the bridge pickup soloed with the tone wide open. I'm playing fingerstyle over the bridge pickup closer to the bridge to get a little bit more brightness out of the attack. I should also take this time to note that I have replaced the stock factory strings with a set of Elixir stainless steel 45 to 105. And because the Gibson sometimes is revered as a one-trick pony, the brightness of the stainless steel definitely helps bring a little bit of top end to make it a little bit more versatile. So with that being said, let's hear it with some slap. Now again, I'm not the best slap player, but I hope that this example will at least let you hear that it can be done. I mean, it's not your typical single coil jazz bass kind of slap tone, but it gets close, especially with those stainless steel strings. It's got that kind of mid-scooped vibe with a little bit more girth due to the humbucking pickups, but the stainless steel strings and the ceramic magnets help bring that top up just a little bit more. Now, despite that we've maybe proven that this bass is more versatile than people give it credit for, let's be real, this thing was born to shovel eighth notes. So with that being said, I'm going to shovel some eighth notes with a pick with a little bit of saturation from the dark glass microtubes. Nothing crazy, just a little bit to kind of give you that pseudo-tube overdriven kind of feel. And now let's push the gain just a little bit more to see how this bass performs under that kind of pressure. We've shown off the tones, we've proven its versatility, and now all that's left to do is for me to give you my opinion on the bass. Let's start with the pros. First off, I absolutely love this bass. It takes a little bit of time to get used to as far as the body shape goes, especially when you're sitting with it because your arm rests in a little bit of a different spot. Once you get over that though, at least for me, once I got over that, it's insanely comfortable. I didn't realize how much I loved a flatter radius. This bass features a 12-inch radius where a Fender, if I'm not mistaken, features a 9.5-inch radius. I think some of the vintage one could be as low as 7.5, but I think 9.5 is about the standard and the average for what you'd find on a Fender bass. And I don't really care for that radius. I don't know why Fender and I have never quite gotten along. I love the tone. I love hearing other people play Fender basses, and even Fender guitars for that matter. But it seems like when I play them, I'm fighting with the instrument, and I'm starting to think now that that might have something to do with the radius. So all that being said, I enjoy a flatter radius. The narrow nut width is also really nice. It's very close, if not exactly the same to a jazz bass, so it's very comfortable to maneuver down in that register. Now, despite the ceramic pickups, this bass still has sort of a bad reputation of being dull, muddy, and undefined. However, I think finding the right set of strings, which for me, in my case, was the Elixir stainless steel set, and maybe by tweaking your amp settings a little bit, you can definitely pull quite a bit of versatility out of this bass. However, I think one of the big reasons this bass has the bad reputation of being dull and muddy and undefined that it does is because a lot of people are plugging it into their amplifier with those knobs set for a Fender bass or something else that's not the Thunderbird. However, if you take a little bit of time, play the bass, get a good feel for it, and dial the amp in to complement the tone that this does produce, I think you'll really enjoy it. And now let's talk about the cons. For me, the biggest, most glaring con is definitely the bridge. My biggest problem with the bridge is that the string ball ends sit too close to the bridge saddle. So if your strings have any kind of silk winding on it, or even just extra wraps like mine do, the E and the A are most likely going to be sitting on the bridge saddle where those silk winds or extra wraps are. And unfortunately, that is not the vocal part of the string. That is just there for extra security. So your E string and maybe your A string might be affected and sound a little bit more dull because of that. However, the good news is both Hipshot and Babix offer replacement aftermarket bridges that directly retrofit with zero modifications to alleviate that very problem. So if you do have a Thunderbird or any Gibson that has that traditional 3-point bridge, I would highly recommend looking into one of those bridges that I mentioned. I have experience with the Babix. I do not have experience with the Hipshot. However, I would very much like to try the Hipshot. Anything I can do to replace that stock bridge, I'm definitely going to look into because that has got to go. The second biggest con that I could find, and I'm sure you knew this was coming, is the neck dive. On some other basses, like maybe this one here, or your typical Fender, the strap pin is set on the horn, which is closer to the 12th fret, which gives you better balance. I know you already know all this stuff, but if you don't, I'm sure you've seen a Fender, you can see this bass. The Thunderbird does not have that upper horn, so the strap pin sits on the back, right where the neck joins the body. This is not the greatest for balance because especially if you're using a cheaper seatbelt style strap and you let go, that bass is going to topple right over. Luckily, this problem is a little bit easier and more cost effective to alleviate. Firstly, you can get a wider strap with a little bit more grip. I don't like the suede straps. You can maybe try something like leather with the padding in it. That definitely helps it sit on your shoulder. Or you can experiment with some counterweights, whether they be some tire weights that go in the cavity or something to attach to this side of your strap. There's a couple different things you can do. I'm sure there's videos on it. If there is, I'll put one right up here in ways of dealing with neck dive. But beyond the bridge and beyond the neck dive, it's kind of the perfect instrument for me. Now, there's one thing I want to leave you with, and that's this. If you've never purchased a Gibson brand new and you have the means to do so, even if that means saving up for a little bit longer than you'd like, I highly recommend doing it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Depending on the model that you're after, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to justify the price. And to be fair, while I did get this Thunderbird free of charge for the review, I have purchased several other Gibsons in the past. Now, whether you buy one online or you get it from your local music store, which I would recommend going the local music store route if you have the opportunity, because it's always best to be able to play it before you buy it. But point being, there is nothing quite like the experience of opening that Gibson case for the first time. There's just a different level of quality and care that goes into all of these instruments, and it's definitely apparent when you open that case. This Thunderbird shipped in a brown Gibson case with that pink interior lining, and in the accessory compartment was a Gibson multi-tool, a cleaning cloth, a strap, a quality control checklist, and a picture of the bass on the bench after it was set up. Now, I know Gibson's a really big company at this point, but that just seems like a really cool extra mile, special attention to detail, boutique kind of thing to do, and I really appreciate it. That's been the case for every guitar and bass that I've bought from Gibson. All of them have come with either a case or a gig bag, depending on the line. And also, not to be overlooked, there is a wonderful smell that comes off the first time opening that case, and sometimes even the second and third times, depending, of that brand new nitrocellulose lacquer that Gibson uses. It's a wonderful aroma and I highly recommend it. So that concludes my love letter to Gibson and subsequently this video. Again, huge thank you to my friend Billy at Zounds for sending me this bass. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please consider subscribing. You can also check out Patreon for more exclusive content, and right here is our video on the Epiphone Thunderbird Vintage Pro in case you haven't seen it. So until next time, I'm Chris from the Bass Channel, and thanks for watching.